Command Point is sponsored by Crossfire Games. Use code CommandPoint25 at checkout to get 5% off your next purchase. Link in the description.
Hello and welcome back to Command Point. I am your host Shane, and I am here for the fifth day of Kill Team here. We've had some Marines of different flavor, both Imperium and Chaos, and we've had some Guardsmen. And today we're going to be talking specifically about the Blades of Khaine, which is a team that is getting. It gets a lot of hate from some people who say that they're not good, but there's other people that are like diehards. And I'm joined today by Gregory. Greg, you're one of my locals, and I'm very excited to have you on here because, I mean, all of my other guests are like these, like, I've had people from World Championships, people from competitive circuits, but you're one of my locals, so welcome. It's good to have somebody from the New York scene on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, so I mean, you've been repping the Blades of Khaine for quite a while. I mean, I think you were still playing them last edition.
Towards the end of second, yeah.
Yeah, and you've got a pretty sharp grasp on them. So I'm excited to talk here about this team, and they're one that kind of intrigues me because I think for a lot of people, Blades is kind of like this enigma where somebody will like read a page of their rules and just be like, nope, too much for me.
Yeah, there's a lot. They have a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of different plays you can make with them. Very fun team.
Yeah, so I guess for somebody coming in who's interested in a new kill team or is interested in getting into kill team and they're like deciding their first faction and they're looking at Blades of Khaine, you as somebody with experience on them that likes the team, what would you say as like how would you describe them as far as like play style goes? Why should somebody get into them, whether it's an aesthetic or it is like a gameplay purpose?
Oh, for me, it's definitely the aesthetic is definitely a big part of it.
Hmm.
Every time I play this team, there's just always a smile on my face. There's so many different options I have, so many different ways to play them. There's a bunch of combinations with you get to combine three different aspects to create endless combinations. They all play together really well, and even if you want to go mono aspect, it plays pretty well.
Yeah, and I mean,
For
you
someone
mentioned.
looking,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah. No, go ahead. Go ahead. You go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, you mentioned flexibility earlier, and I think that's like kind of ties into what you're talking about with the three aspects.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, definitely. You have your the Dire Avengers for the long range, and Banshees and Scorpions for getting up close. And even though Banshees and Scorpions are both melees, they do very different things.
Yeah, for
That
sure.
is one. Yeah.
They're definitely like they're both melee operatives, but the Banshees are a little bit more like fast, maybe like more of a hit and run, whereas the Scorpions are a little more like.
Uh,
uh,
Kind of the opposite, I would
okay.
say. Scorpions, they have one of them is the strike and fade. So after you kill somebody in melee, you get to switch back to conceal and hide. Uh, Banshees, usually when I take Banshees, I'm trying to be very aggressive with them. There's a lot of plays you can make where you charge somebody, you charge somebody, and then one of the Banshee's ploys is Rain of Tears. You strike them with a crit, killing them, and then dash forward 3 inches to get in range to shoot somebody else.
Yeah, stuff like I guess
Yeah.
that's probably a better representation of it, where the Banshees are the more aggressive ones, and this is kind of a good segue into my next question because, you know, I've been saying it to everybody I've talked to at this point, but some teams have a little more list building than others, and I think that Blades of Khaine kind of falls into that category of you have a lot of ways to like decide your loadout, whether it's deciding between whether going mono or something else. How do you just like typically make those choices? Like what plays into deciding what you take?
Yeah, sure. So if I go mono aspect, it's usually a matchup thing. Usually I go mono Banshees into elites. They're very good at killing elites. They have 4/6, 4 dice hitting on threes, 4/6 power weapons, lethal 5. Really shreds through elites pretty easily. Um, Other than that, it really is matchup by matchup. It's based on what tac ops I want to take.
Mhm.
So whatever aspect you have the most up, you get to take their tac op. So if you want to play a contain style, you take 3 Dire Avengers and some combination of 3 Banshees, 2 Scorpions, or the other way around. If you want to take plant beacons, you take 3 Banshees and some combination of 2 and 3. It really is based on that for me. Is what tac op do I want to play this game?
Nice. That's really interesting. And I guess like Which of the three would you say is your favorite?
Oh, probably Banshees. But I think if you give me another month or so, I'm probably gonna end up saying Dire Avengers. I think they're very underrated right now.
Really, that's
Right
kind of
now,
interesting.
yeah. I think there was one person who took Blades of Khaine to Worlds, and I think I hear people saying that he played 8 Dire Avengers.
I
I don't
played
think he
games
did too well.
on the
Yeah,
tables next to him, and I saw it for myself. So yeah,
he did take 8 Dire Avengers. Okay,
yeah.
nice to have that confirmed. Uh, yeah, I think there's a lot of play with mono Dire Avengers. Like their big thing is the lethal five technique, being able to do that twice per turning points big. And on Into the Dark, they get the Torrent 2 technique, which essentially turns it into lethal five. So you get 4 shots with lethal five and rending. It's a pretty deadly combination.
Yeah, that's really good actually.
Hmm.
I didn't think about the fact that you get that with twice with mono, but pretty interesting. I guess I wanted to ask about TAC Ops. You touched on it a little bit. I think that everybody that I've talked to that's playing a team that could take a recon, they've told me that they love plant beacons. You mentioned plant beacons, but kind of how do you decide the TAC op for each game?
On Volcus specifically, if there's a stronghold in the middle of the map, I like take ground a lot. Gives me something to play for. Lets me kind of stick to my game plan, so to speak. Um, just about every other map, I usually take plant beacons by default.
Mm-hmm.
There's one Blades of Khaine player in your Discord, Phoenix, who I've played against him a couple of times, and he's taken implant, and he scored 6 points against me every time we played, like I think
Interesting.
2 or 3 games. And yeah, another great thing about Blades of Khaine, you get access to all the tac ops, even if you want to run Seek and Destroy for some reason.
Yeah, Seek and Destroy is probably a tough one for Blades of
Um,
Khaine. But it's interesting to
yeah.
hear you say that you're deviating from just plant beacons because the take ground thing makes sense to me because the banshees and the scorpions are they're more up close type of threatening operatives, and for a team with a bunch of 3 APL guys, stuff like take ground I can see being kind of effective because just one guy in those in the stronghold is 3. So I mean
Yep.
that's not too bad.
Especially if you take scorpions. If you kill somebody in the stronghold and then strike and fade, it's going to be really hard for your opponent to get a shot on them. You basically can control a stronghold with just one scorpion.
Yeah, that's a really
Um,
good point.
yeah. Um, the one thing I will say about plant beacons is it's really hard to deny. Um, a lot of games I play, plant beacons is just a free 4 or 5 points at least.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, honestly, up until turn 4, I would say this turn 4 you might have to make a tough choice at some point to get that 5th or 6th point, but typically I think I totally agree that it is the
Oh,
safest to get like 4 on for sure.
yeah. Well, the big thing about it is being 3 APL, so you can
Hmm.
take an aggressive action like charging somebody and then planting a beacon on top of their corpse. A
Yeah,
lot of fun to do.
love that. Love that.
Mhm.
So next up, so in past years, I've kind of talked a little bit about. I've asked my interviewees about turn 1 and what they played on turn 1 and how they would set up. Turn 1 these days is very different. It's a lot more passive,
Mhm.
and it's more about like the early game as kind of a concept rather than a turn 1 is early game, turn 2 and 3 is mid game. So, like, I guess how do you set up in the early game? Like, what are you trying to stage? What kind of things are you looking to set up? And just what's kind of the general approach for you?
It really depends on the matchup. If it's a
Hmm.
matchup where I want to just run at them and hit them as much as I can, um, in those matchups, I'm probably taking 3 or 4 banshees and a couple scorpions and maybe one dire avenger just to keep my opponent honest, so they
Hmm.
can't stage aggressively without getting punished for it. Uh, the big piece of advice I get for thinking about turn 1 is the scorpions have one with the gloom, which gives them super conceal, and with the FAQ that came out not that long ago, that'll ignore seek light.
Hmm.
So that is one of the things when I'm evaluating a map. First thing I look at is where can I place that one scorpion with the gloom where he's going to be the most threatening. Um,
Nice.
Otherwise, yeah. If I'm playing the full Dire Avengers on Into the Dark, I'm usually looking for a line to hold, and probably taking contain, take ground sometimes, and on some Into the Dark maps, but mostly it's going to be contain there. and they're very much just trying to spread out, make sure I cover all as much ground as I can, make sure my opponent doesn't have a safe spot to put someone in my territory to deny contain points.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So one thing I wanted to touch on, and this is always a pretty interesting one to ask people that have a lot of experience with their faction. What is like I guess a piece of advice that you could give for somebody that is starting up playing Blades of Khaine for the first time, where like something that maybe you like clicked for you after a handful of games and it made you think like, wow, I wish I had thought about this earlier. It would have made all my games easier. Kind of like an early sort of level up to piece of advice that you would give.
Oh, that's a great question. I guess I'll bring up a scenario that happened the last game I played against Orcs. I staged up a Scorpion aggressively, and he ran his Daka Boy right into his face, put him down to 1 hit point, and I was thinking, oh, he's probably just done. He's probably just going to be the guy who taps the point a lot. But then I pulled off a Patient Strike Sudden Blow, which is you get to move in and out of people's control range, and then you pick somebody who you moved in control range of to deal 2 plus D3. And that softened Daka Boy up. I think I did. I ended up doing, I think it was 4 damage, putting him to 6, and then a Banshee one-shotted him later. It was kind of like just the amount of options you have with this team is vast. Just when you're playing them for the first time, pick one aspect you like the most, play that one, learn the rules inside and out, and then start mixing in a second aspect you like and do that with a third. You kind of get a good feel for how they play if you play mono aspect and slowly mix them in.
I really like that because I think a lot of people go in with Blades of Khaine and they just try right off the bat to just play all 3 aspects, try to pick like the most optimal team, and they might maybe they get frustrated because it just isn't clicking for them, and I think the idea of starting mono and like working your way from there is probably a more digestible way to pick that team up, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, did you have anything else on that one?
Yeah. I was gonna say if you are picking up the team for the first time, I'd recommend Mono Banshees to start. They're very fun. They have a lot of flexibility too. A lot of being able to fly charge twice in a turning point's a lot of fun. You get some crazy angles.
Yeah, I mean you can do crazy stuff just with acrobatic alone. Just the amount of threats you're able to like project on Volcus boards. All right, so one thing I think this team might be kind of good for this type of question, but this is one that I've had a lot of fun asking people. What would you say in your mind? I guess you can try to recount back in your games. When I ask you to describe like the flashiest, coolest play that you have done or you can think of doing with Blades of Khaine, because they're definitely a finessey sort of team. So what would you say is like the coolest play you can do with this team, or at least the coolest that you've done?
Man, it's hard to pick just one.
I know they have a lot.
There is a lot you can do with them. There's a lot of really cool stuff. I guess the game I played against you comes to mind. It was on Into the Dark, and I think I took a mixed loadout. And I had a Scorpion on the team, and I set him up to be on one of the points, just holding the point in my territory on my side of the map. And you were playing Higher Tech,
Yeah.
and you put someone up next to a door, and I was able to use Patient Strike, Sudden Blow, go in and out of his control range, and then hide behind the door and hatchway fight you. I ended up doing like a minimum 5 damage between the Scorpions dealing 2 damage when they fight and the Patient Strike, Sudden Blow. That's probably the coolest thing for me.
Yeah, and especially because the other layer of that was me playing Higher Tech, I had Tesla Waves, and since we were on Into the Dark, you were able to use the move from Patient Strike to Hatchway Fight instead of charging. So you avoid my Tesla, you hit me for D3 plus 2 with that. I get 2 off the bat from the Manda Blasters, and then you just roll your dice to attack me, and I'm just like, holy crap.
I hit you once and you're dead. It's kind of crazy that you go from full health to being able to be one-shot by a unit all in one turn. Yeah.
No, that's a good one, because I mean you just melted. I think it was my Psychomancer. You just completely just annihilated that model.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, Greg. We've got one more question. This is maybe the most important question of the whole interview. I'm asking everybody. Last year, I believe I asked favorite Christmas movie. The year before that, it was favorite Christmas song. This year, I'm asking everybody to tell me their favorite. It can be a dish, it can be a drink, it can be a treat, but your favorite Christmas, one of those things, food, drink, or treat.
Oh, it's got to be a Christmas ham.
Okay.
I love ham. Yeah, it's Christmas ham all the way.
I'm a ham enjoyer as well. I do like ham.
Yeah,
Ham's good. We've gotten a few eggnogs, so ham's an
eggnog's a
interesting
good
one.
one.
I'm very excited
Yeah.
to see, like, by the end of this, what the kinds of answers I get. But all right. Well, thank you so much, Greg, for joining us. It was awesome to have you on here talking about Blades of Khaine. I'm excited to get more games against your Blades of Khaine because they are a fun team to play against as well, I would say.
I'm glad to hear they're fun to play against.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. Again, thank you for coming on. This is the 5th day of Kill Team. And guys, if you're not already subscribed to Command Point, please subscribe. We are very, very close if we're not there already by the time this drops. Thank you, everybody who is following us on Patreon and everywhere else. You guys are the best. Happy holidays, and tune in tomorrow for the 6th day of Kill Team for a very interesting faction.